I do like factories. And I just wanted to remind us in the audience of the challenge that we've accepted since the start of the research center. We need to increase value by 400%. I think we might need to adjust that number on the basis of being weaklings after Gunther's presentation. But we do have to remove CO2 by 100%. There's no negotiation on this. Resource use depends on the resource, depends on the location. So we know that the systems are going to change vastly. I'm a production engineer and I want to reflect on that. I'm not an economist. I come at this from a slightly different viewpoint, and a lot of people in the room do come from that factory and product design background. And in the last 30 years, I've seen some really big changes. I've seen lean coming in the world. I've seen globalization, an increasing number of middle-class consumers, an increasing digitalization. I think the digitalization story is only halfway through. We're going to see much more modeling in the future, but maybe, hopefully, less spreadsheets and more systems dynamics models. But we're also going to see some other really significant changes. And for the younger people in the room, if you think the last 30 or 40 years were difficult to predict, and when I first went into a factory in 1976, we didn't predict lean and globalization and the effects, and we were never ready for it. And if we had, we could have all got rich. And I don't think that's a terrible problem. But we can see the shifts that are going to happen in the next 30 years. Maybe we should be better at it. There's going to be a lot of disruptions. Resources are massively constrained. We're going to talk later today about big data and small factories. These are very significant shifts in the way that the production system works and how we deliver value. Those of you who meet me know that I do this slide all the time, right? I like to start by being angry. Gunther is he's a pleasant Belgian, right? I'm an angry Welshman. What the heck is happening to our world, right? How many stupidities? And I won't invite you to offer up your own stupidity, because I know in this room there's a whole bunch of other angry and or polite people who collect stupidities. We have slide sets of stupid case studies of and we just want to stare at it and go, why? A child would know this was a wrong answer, right? My favorite stupidity, we've now gone over $1 trillion, over 1,000 billion US dollars annually, shifting from taxpayers to helping oil and gas companies. One of the world's more mature industries. I still don't understand how they get away with it. And at the same time, making suggestions that we shouldn't be helping other industries, because those other industries surely, like solar, are maturing now. This is more than 1% of the global economy, $77 trillion, the global economy. More than 1% is your money going to oil and gas companies. Please, start complaining. Tell your children, put it in a book, right? Preferably a stone book. What's the journey that we see companies going on? When we set out 6-7 years ago to make a plan for our research, we thought that efficiency, technology, and system transformation were the 3 steps that industry were taking, and they would need support and research to help them take those steps. We've been overtaken only in one area. Those 3 predictions were right. But we thought that value transformation, business model transformation, would be something that would be slightly more distant and be part of system transformation. And I'm really happy to say that it's the one area that's accelerated beyond our prediction. That business model transformation is happening incredibly quickly across a range of sectors, and we are pulled into a lot of that research. So I'll talk briefly about that. I went into university a long time ago as a production engineer. All of my training, every minute of my training, was about improving the productivity of people and capital every minute. Guess what? If you go into university to be trained in production engineering now, guess what you're taught? Apparently the world has not changed, right? And I hope that these figures, with the help, Nick, put your hands up, Nick has helped produce these figures, show us, if I can do this, the blue line is the total amount of money British companies spend on people, and the red line is the total amount of money British factories spend on water, energy, and materials. Guess what I'm taught to optimize? The blue line, not the line that's 5 times bigger. Duh, right? The education system is part of the problem here. And we asked ourselves, because we just wanted to have a number, because when you want to talk to people, you know, what does that mean? And, you know, I'm going to show off a little bit of Toyota data here. We took a number of sectors, in this case the car sector, and a number of dimensions of performance, in this case the energy performance, and we said, hey, Toyota, you'll see them in the top right of this graph, have for 14 years been averaging 8% per annum energy reduction in the manufacture of their cars. What would happen if other companies moved halfway towards best in class? 10 billion profit, 300,000 extra jobs, 4.5% reduction in CO2 emissions in the UK. Why the heck aren't we doing this? And for those of you who know me, you understand I'm being really, really calm right now, because this drives me absolutely nuts. We are not efficient, and we have got to be brave enough to admit it and do something about it. And it's really great to hear Steve come up and talk earlier. You know, it would be really easy for people like Steve to sit on this story and just live off it. And Steve understands he's got to go to the next step and the next step and keep driving and keep driving. I want to talk a little bit about what we're learning on the business model innovation stuff. It's like a setup. You set up so many of these arguments, so I'm luckily going to be able to go quite quickly through some of these. These are trends that we see happening with our collaborators. The importance, the rising importance of provenance in particular. One of the things about big data and internet is we can see stuff. There's no hiding place anymore. Provenance is incredibly important. How much are you going to pay for stuff that doesn't have material X in it, even if it's below 1%, and the stuff that you know is completely organic? It's happening. For those of you from brand companies, and I know there are quite a few in the room who are very well-known global brands, brands are seen as the interpreters here. It doesn't matter. Nobody wants to do an LCA. We've got Tata in the room, and Hugo Boss, and Toyota and M&S. You are interpreters. If you want to be trusted, people will trust you. But they will also see the bad stories, because bad stories are really easy to come out. So you've got to take care of the world in a way that your customers expect of you, and those expectations are much higher than regulations. And this is either an advantage or something that you hide away from. And you say, hey, we meet the regulations. I think organizations are beginning to understand, some leading the way, some of them being dragged into this conversation, that the primacy of shareholder view of capitalism doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. It's worked really well for a very small number of people. I wish I was one of them, right? And then I would be on holiday and not here talking to you lot. But unfortunately, I didn't get in at the right time, and I'm not incredibly wealthy, and maybe we should share it. And I think that is one of the great changes that's beginning to happen. And companies are talking about purpose, talking about governance. I think it's early days. I don't think there are many really good solutions out there yet. I might mention one in a second. But I just want to give an example. Everybody who knows me has seen this slide before. I like the cheesy music. Why am I showing this? Those of you who know me, I used to be responsible for improving the design and manufacture of these things at Martin Baker. When you're at Martin Baker, there is not a single person in that company who doesn't know what the purpose of the company is. It's saving lives. Nobody talks about money. Well, you have to talk about money, because you have to use money to save lives. If the only thing you're interested in is saving lives, funny enough, you make the world's best ejection seat. And now I would ask you to think, if you're going to specify an aircraft, would you buy the second best? Because that's the reason why Martin Baker have 95% of the world market. Not because they want, there's no spreadsheet saying we're going to have 95% of the world market. There's no spreadsheet about profit. It's about saving lives and doing it incredibly well and incredibly diligently. And the financial and the economic and the social success that that organization has comes from that unbelievably clear sense of purpose. And we're seeing it increasingly in other organizations. One of the reasons I went into the university system was I honestly didn't know where else to work after working for a company like that. I was looking at other jobs and I was offered other jobs. I didn't want to take them. Resilience is rising. Stafford from Riversimple recognizes this picture. It's a picture that says, if you're going to generate a business model, knowing that the external world is changing, customer expectations are constantly rising, and government and planetary constraints are constantly lowering, why would you operate a business model that you know is not going to be allowed to operate in the future? Surely the most profitable place to be is in the middle of this. And if you're in the middle of this, you would be encouraging customer expectations to go up as quickly as possible and encouraging government and planetary constraints to be understood and internalized as quickly as possible. What are the strategies that put you in the middle? So I am going to talk very briefly about the value-creating logic of business. That's what the technical way in which we talk about business model innovation. And I am, Stafford, put your hands up, please. Stafford's at the back. If you want to talk to him about Riversimple, he's one of the chief technologists of this car company. I'm one of the co-founders. You can't buy the car. We are selling the insurance, the repair, the maintenance, the fuel, all in one price per month, per mile traveled. If you internalize all of the benefits, you end up with a car that's cheaper to own than a Smart, that does about 1 liter per 100 kilometers equivalent, because it's not using oil, it's a hydrogen fuel cell car. And it generates really significant profit. And it's about internalizing and aligning all of those interests. And pre-orders are available through Stafford. And we're crowdfunding at the moment to build. Thank you, I'd forgotten. Gosh, how do I? We're crowdfunding. Go to the Riversimple website. We'd love your money. And I was just playing on Google, looking for a picture of a bicycle last week, and I didn't know this, and I found this. Anybody heard of this? It's very new, buzz bikes, really new. So what's the most valuable thing about a bike in London? Apparently, it's the opportunity to advertise. So if you live in the right part of town, and you work in the right part of town, and you promise to park your bike outside rather than inside, they'll give you the bike for free. It's a free bike. That's the value of a bike. And that's systems thinking, right? And I loved it. Unfortunately, I don't live or work in the right parts of London. But for those who do, I'd be on that bike just to make the point. It's a really good understanding of value. And I've got to say that in our research, I think we've become quite good at identifying failed value. We've got some tools and techniques to help organizations do that through a system-oriented view of analyzing what are currently failed value exchanges in systems and then pulling them into the business model. I'm going to end with a picture of the future, or some pictures of the future. It's already been referenced. We've been doing some work in various ways. I think this picture is really interesting, and I'm still going to use it. In 2011, in British manufacturing, 11% of people who worked in British manufacturing were operators, and 11.4% were managers. There's more managers than operators already in British manufacturing. And to understand what we mean by industry is not easy to take images from the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, and earlier. And this is a genuinely important political problem, because manufacturing is not a solution to the employment issue, and many people, many politicians see it as exactly that. Once you understand that's what industry isn't, then you have a better understanding of what industry might be in the future. We've been plotting what we think are key influences to our choice of research agenda. And I'd like to say that I think that there are 3 waves. And you know, last time when we had this rethink of the future research agenda, I thought there were 3 waves going forward, and it turned out there were 4. Right? The business model innovation came to the fore. But this time, I think there are 3, and no doubt they'll be wrong. Right now, I think that business is still focusing on efficiency in the hope of a growing market. The sort of research that's dominating at the moment is about provenance. It's about co-creation and personalization. I've stolen one of Steve Hope's words from Toyota Gentani, which is actually understanding actual limits of things, not what we think are the limits. And that difference between real limits and perceived limits is really quite important. Certainly, most of our systems are really, really, really astonishingly far from thermodynamic limits. I think we're seeing the start of leading companies doing lots of disruption and experimentation. And the message that I've taken from Gunther is maybe we shouldn't be experimenting. Maybe we should be going for scale a bit more quickly and a bit more bravely. But from my perception, working with the members and other companies, it is good to see them beginning to experiment, and we need to help them do that. And part of that experiment is dealing with disruptions, dealing with seawater rises, great example there, searching in different ways for value. I think biology is the new physics, although I do understand your point about overall system efficiency might go back to physics at the end of the day. In my world, we very rarely meet people who understand biology, and we need to meet more. And I think that's a genuine problem. We need to engage more biologists. In the long run, I think we're going to see really very different models of growth coming out of companies. Industrial geography is going to be different. I'll come back to that. I think the biggest thing on here is governance. And it's the one thing that nobody's researching or talking about. And I don't think we will have governance of our industrial system in the way that we see it today, because it's failed and it's failing. But maybe that conversation will be allowed in the next 5 or 10 years. I'm going to offer some pictures of the future. I think some of these are inevitable. Who's building their businesses from these ideas? And it's very clear to me that in the future, some factories are going to be very clean, in that the air, the water, and the material emissions are all going to be non-toxic or even non-existent. Those materials that we send out into the world, like these books, we're not going to say goodbye to them, because we're going to expect them back in 3 years' time. We're going to be able to make things everywhere because the scale of manufacturing is changing. So where we place factories as a decision, strategic decision, is changing. We're going to keep in touch. So I've no doubt that in a few years' time, these things will have sensors in them, and I'm sure it has now somewhere a little, yes, it does. It has the QR code. And, you know, somebody will be on WeChat talking about how they use the book, and that data will come back, and we'll use that to make sure that we write better books in the future. We have to meet and find, amongst a lot of strangers, the right people to work with. We call it the kissing frogs problem here. And we might even recognize the value in slowing down some of our manufacturing processes, even if through vortices we can speed things up. In one instance, in many cases in factories that I go to, there's a desire for speed which just is willing to burn energy, and it's not necessarily a logical desire for speed. And in that case, we're going to have people saying, can we have your nice factory that provides nice jobs at the end of our street? Some of our future projects, we're working on some of these principles. I've mentioned clean and never saying goodbye. What happens if the factory finds its raw materials around itself? Just think about that for a minute, because with the brain power that we currently have, we can model the material flows in a city and model the material flows around Lincoln, yeah? And why wouldn't a factory go, oh, wait a minute, I'm just going to make stuff out of stuff that's available? It's going to happen. And I think we've already seeing examples of people trying to forage their own waste and local wastes, but why not just make that geographical? And the island example is a really good one of that, but I think we'll see that increasing in the future. This is one of my personal new ones. And you know, when you come up with an idea, and it's almost like convergent evolution. I thought this was a really crazy idea, and on Monday morning this week, we had a meeting encouraged by the Mad Fernando family, who are in the second row here, with another mad person from Vietnam. And an idea that I thought was just a little bit crazy. They went, oh, no, we're beginning to work on it. What's that idea? The scale of manufacturing is reducing. What if we can take waste product from clothing systems and put it into shoe manufacture, but at the scale where we can put that into a container? What if we can then drop that into conflict zones and have people adding value and having good jobs, even in conflict zones? So pop-up factories in conflict zones. And I thought, this is a barking mad idea. And on Monday, I'm introduced to people, including the 3 mad Cavaliers down here, who are trying to do that. Right? It's fantastic. Go and talk to them. They are strange. I'm going to encourage you to go out and find waste, find value, change the system, and even cheat. I like cheating, right? Just, you know, it's not a rule if you ignore it, right? Thank you.